Hello, I am Deb Coviello, the Drop-In CEO. And as always, I'm grateful that you've dropped in on the show where week after week, I speak to the most amazing leaders who share their insights with you. And I do this work. I sincerely care about the C-suite leader of today. And I will also say of tomorrow, because I want this content to be able to help you navigate challenges and opportunities with confidence. And as always, I am thrilled for this week's guest, Ashley Rudolph, who is a leadership coach and business strategist who helps high achieving executives, founders, and industry leaders navigate career growth, leadership transitions, and strategic decision making with ease. And it is that reason, because her work is so aligned with what I like to do, that I want to pick her brain and have her share her stories and insights with you. So, Ashley, thank you for dropping in on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about this conversation that we're going to have today.
Yeah, I am as well. And before we jumped on here, we were just vibing about our backstories a little bit and things coming up in our lives. We're very excited for family, festivity, and the personal side of what we do. I just a little reminder to my audience here: we may be a business and leadership podcast forum, but just remember this is about human connection. Take some time to get to know the personal side of people before we go into the transactional, and that's why I want to hand it back over to Ashley. Please share a little bit about yourself and your backstory and how you've come to do this work.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I'll start with a little bit of the personal because maybe I think that shines a light on my style. So I am a born and raised New Yorker. So everything about working with people that also work in fast-paced environments or have a go, go, go mentality probably aligns with me being a New Yorker. But just to speak a little bit more about my work. So as you mentioned, I'm a leadership coach. I have my own business. It's a premium coaching company called Work with Ashley R, which is very easy to remember. And I came into coaching from spending about 15 years in industry, 10 of those years in the tech and startup world. And when I was in tech, I actually climbed the ladder very quickly. I went from an individual contributor type of role all the way up to a vice president in 5 years. And there was a lot about how I worked or the people that were mentoring me that led to that success. And at the end of my run in tech, or when I was itching to do something new at about the 10-year mark, I really thought hard about my path and my journey. And the things that I really loved was leading teams, building teams, coaching and developing people. I was always the one that my coworkers would turn to get job advice. And that really led me into this path of coaching. And I loved your intro because the audience here is execs, CEOs, founders, but then also what I like to call next gen execs. And I work a lot with next gen execs as well. And I work with executives who are interested in developing that next generation of leaders. So that's why I'm here and what I do.
So I'm starting to smile because you say you're a New Yorker and I am a Jersey girl
Yeah.
at heart. But somehow,
Yeah.
even though I'm in the Midwest now, if you really want to get to know me, I am
Yeah.
a fast talker. And there's a
Uh-huh.
lot of
Yeah. Yep.
idiosyncrasies that we have, and
Yep.
talking about a slice of pizza, and they can't beat New York or New
Uh-huh.
Jersey pizza,
Yeah.
but love
No.
the Midwest. But we're our own
Yeah.
kind.
Yes. Yes, we are. We are.
you, one of the things you talked about that, I've not been spending enough time with, and I actually want to go here first, is
Mhm.
we support those high achievers, those C-suite leaders, and you talk about the next gen executive. Now, I am
Yeah.
banging my head against a wall right now. I have been fortunate to meet so many next gen executives. They're highly
Yeah.
talented, going up the flagpole, and then
Yeah.
they hit a wall, whether it's their
Yes.
own or in the corporate space. And
Yes.
they come to me and I talk to them. But then when I say,
Yeah.
hey, I can coach you, they
Yeah.
don't take the decision to invest in themselves. Now, I'm going to just
Totally.
throw that back at you because
Yeah.
we're talking to you. If you're out there right now, what are your thoughts about those people that so need your support, but may
Yeah.
or may not take the decision to invest in themselves?
Totally. Yes. And I see this sometimes too. And so I always tell myself, and I'll start with a quote, it's, if you're exceptional, you will always be an exception, right? And I think what people come to this space as is like, I've always done it on my own, and I'm someone who can take advice and action it and get to where I want to be. But again, if you're exceptional, you will always be an exception. And there will be a point where that strategy just doesn't work for you anymore. And you need someone who understands exceptional people to help you unblock yourself and get to that next level. But I see that all the time too. And sometimes a high achiever, and I'm speaking as a high achiever myself, I can be my own worst enemy, and I can, practice that hyper independence, right? And be
Mhm.
like, I'll just figure it out, and just really want to be the person who solves the problem. But there is nothing like sitting in a room with someone who deeply understands who you are going through, and maybe they ask a question that you hadn't thought of yourself, and that unlocks something for you. But it's not going to be in a book. It's not going to be in a framework. It's not going to be in a TikTok video, right? It's just not. And you just need to work with someone that speaks to that experience.
And I love this conversation because I got like 3 questions already rolled up around this. But, it is one of those things, like, for instance, why I will say, I am not a certified coach.
Yeah,
However, I have
neither am I.
mentored a lot. Yeah, okay, so I've
Yeah,
mentored a lot of people. I am
yeah,
familiar with the frameworks. I have gone through all
yeah,
the different surveys, but
yes,
it's almost like there's tools in my toolbox, but what really matters is you can't put anybody in a box into a
no,
whatever. You have to deeply listen to that person and hear what
yes,
they can't hear or see what they can't
yes,
see, and then
yes.
pick and choose some tools. But everyone is individual. Coaching is a very individual sport.
It is. It is. It is. So much of it, especially when you're working with high achievers, right? So much of it is based on the context that they're in and them,
Yeah.
their own context. And it really takes someone who can read you to help you figure out, okay, yep, you're totally capable of figuring out what the right next step for yourself may be. But without having someone who's asking you the right questions or sharing maybe similar experiences that other people have gone through, or and speak to the experiences of the hundreds of high achievers that you've worked with and like name that nuance, right? You just may not get there. Especially, yeah, especially if you're someone who is big fish in a small pond, or
Oh my
you're looking
God.
to your peers for advice, but they just don't understand your experience because it's so unique.
I have another question before I talk about the confidence card. So
Yeah,
here's the other thing that I'm thinking. And again, if you guys are out there, mid-career professionals, high achievers, and still haven't made the decision to maybe work with somebody, there's always to your point, you said, I can do it myself because that's how
yeah,
we've been able to operate and it no longer serves
totally.
us. But I'm
Yeah,
also finding that from a demographic perspective, they may be in that stage of life where either they're nurturing family
yeah,
or other significant others, community, or
yeah,
maybe elderly parents for which those are
yeah,
their
yeah,
priorities. And so I'm
totally.
wondering, what are your thoughts knowing that you maybe have they want to maybe invest in themselves, but just circumstances they can't. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts
Mm.
around that? Because career personal development is a forever process.
It is a forever process. And sometimes when I have clients that come in this situation, I do sometimes see that they haven't advocated for themselves, right? So coaching doesn't always have to be a personal investment. If you're a high achiever, your company is probably going to be invested in your development too. So for some, that ends up being the solution, where I'll even work with people and say, like, here's the proposal that you could put forth to your executive team and to ask for investing in coaching. And 9 times out of 10, sometimes 10 times out of 10, right, they get a resounding yes and an investment. And then they get that relief of like, oh my gosh, I didn't have to, put my credit card down or invest my own dollars in this, especially if there are budget constraints. But then on the flip side, so if we take finance off the table, I have often found that when you're in that headspace that you mentioned, where you are the person who just wants to solve the problem yourself, and maybe you're stuck. So you're trying a bunch of different things. That is time and that is energy that you are directing to solving this problem that you just can't crack yet. And you have all of these other things going on in your life too that also need your time and energy. And it is much more efficient to work with someone to help get to solving that problem, probably quicker than you would have if you were just exploring on your own. So, coaching is actually an efficiency driver too, right? Because I'm helping you get to the solution that you want, and I'm helping you get there probably quicker than you would have on your own. And that frees up the time that you need to spend in other areas too.
And I love what you say about that. And I think if I could just share a thought for my audience
Yeah.
is that gnawing feeling that, you're trying to muscle through whatever the circumstances is, you're not being able to get a different result, you're losing your
Yeah.
confidence because I
Oh
should
my
have been
gosh.
able to
Yeah.
figure this out myself, and all I've got to take the kids to soccer, or mom needs this, or what
Yeah.
have you. It can be a really, really tough place. But I will tell you, I firsthand have had several coaches, and it was in response to getting that gnawing feeling. I
Yeah.
don't know what to do, but I know I
Yeah.
need to do something. Self-awareness, and I want to just throw it to everybody, if you have the self-awareness that something needs to change, please don't let change happen to you.
Yeah.
You still have control over what you do. And I will agree with Ashley. Having that external person, just asking a few placed questions can, oh my God, in a single session, 3 sessions, it's like relief to say, oh, that is what's holding me back. So again, plug for Ashley, plug
Totally.
for me. And
Yes.
get that
Yes.
external
Yeah.
support.
Yeah, and I have two examples here
Yeah.
actually. So although it's an individual thing, right? It may feel like a personal struggle. You and I both know that these struggles do translate into the workplace too. So you may have a high achiever who is struggling to figure out like their long-term career strategy is, and maybe feel like they're ready for the next level, but you as an executive haven't seen what you need to see, but they also don't know what you need to see even if you've given the feedback. And that frustration leads to someone who was high achieving who ends up being difficult to work with, or someone who was high achieving like checking out in the workplace. And just having the support can lead to a different outcome. It may even lead to someone who is high achieving leaving your organization even though you have seen so much promise in this person. So I think there are some times where I try to pull a client out of the, okay, yes, you're having a personal struggle here, but that has an impact on the larger ecosystem that you're operating within. And like us solving the you problem, the current problem, actually leads to better results for everyone here.
So I'd love to just step back a little bit and revert back to your
Yeah.
path into this work.
Yeah.
I'm curious just for just about your entrepreneurial journey and starting a business. You went from being a high achiever and, being an individual contributor and going up to a VP. Congratulations, pat yourself on the back. It's hard, it was
Thanks.
rewarding.
Yeah.
But then what were the opportunities or challenges to say, "All right, I'm going to do something completely different and build a business?" Again, reinventing yourself, all of that. Tell me a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, it was a really interesting journey, and I'll share two stories here. So one was when I was in tech at my last company. This was in 2023. I was in the education technology field, which has gone through lots and lots of changes. And towards the end of my time there, myself and my entire department actually ended up getting laid off, which was a first to me in my career, being laid off as a department leader with my department. And I think for me at the time, that very much could have been a setback. I but I didn't think about it in that way. I was lucky enough to have a lot of advance notice. I had 2 months notice that our CTO told me, because he respected me and like thought that this was something that I needed to know was imminent. And in that moment, I think I just made a choice about how I wanted to show up as the leader that I always had. And that type of leader was someone who was like, yep, this thing is happening to me, but I still have a sense of control here and I still have a team of people. And my journey at this company is ending, but it means that I am going to have a new career chapter, and so is the rest of my team. But I have the luxury of knowing, and they don't. So, what I did was instead of doing the professionally immature thing and just spilling the beans to my team or being like, hey guys, keep a secret, that's not the leader that I am. I ended up implementing a ceremony for my team where we would talk about their projects. Someone would present every week and they would talk about a successful project, what they learned, who they worked with, what they achieved, what the outcome was. Very much how someone would talk about themselves in an interview. And myself and the director on the team would give them feedback about how they were positioning their work, so that they got coaching without really knowing that that was the coaching. And we did that for the 2 months that we had. And we basically prepared everyone mentally for the job search. And I think at a certain point in time, there were people that were like, oh, something feels amiss at the company, like what's happening, maybe fishing for an answer from me. And the response to that was, yeah, things feel really uncertain here, but what are you going to do about that uncertainty, right? Like, it's not going to be a good use of your time to speculate what is happening, what may be, what may not be, but how is that uncertainty landing for you and what do you want to do about it? If you want to start a job search, hey, you can do that. Or if you want to sit and wait and see what happens, you can also do that. But I just found a way to navigate the situation from a place of, yep, I'm grounded and there are things that I can do and there are things that I can't do for this team, but I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that they're set up. And once the day came, everyone, no one was surprised, and they were basically like, okay, well, now I can like direct my energy to doing what I need to do. And some people found jobs immediately in this job market, which is great. But once I had a chance to pause and ask myself what I wanted to do after
Mm.
spending months taking care of everyone else, and it just seemed very natural that I was ready to go out on my own. And that's when I decided that I wanted to explore coaching. So I took a summer off, an adult summer, and then I was like, okay, September's here. I'm going to start this business. And I started talking to former coworkers, and I put up a website. I got a client the next day, and then like moving from there, I just
Wow.
continued building up my client base. But that's exactly the story behind this. And I think it's representative of the type of leader or the type of person that I am, and why that led me to making this choice. And it's like, yep, I've dealt with the hard stuff and it's, you can still have a plan, and I try to bring that to my coaching with my clients too.
Curious, did anybody,
Yeah.
once you shared the news with them of they have to exit the business, did anybody come back to you and say, oh, so that's why you were having us do all those report outs and such? Did anybody like close the loop on
Yeah.
that? They did?
They did, and they thanked me. They thanked me for it because they saw what a lot of their other colleagues were going through the minute that the news landed, right? So they're shocked, surprised. You go through a grieving process, but I think they were just ready to jump into the job search.
Mhm.
And yeah, they just came back and they thanked me for the preparation. And yeah, yeah.
The other nugget that you shared, and I also have received this advice because, again, I have a can do attitude. I'm going to figure this out.
Yes. Yes.
Was the uncertainty card, where you
Yeah.
feel helpless and can't do anything. And I think that's really great advice
Yeah.
for everybody. The realization that there's very little you can control, that there's this big,
Yeah.
vast universe and moving parts for which you
Yeah.
cannot control. And it's not a great feeling. But I think we have to
Yeah.
then inventory what are those things in our life that we can say,
Yeah.
I can control this, how I think, how I
Yes.
approach my positivity. I'm going to do a
Yeah.
little more exercise just to get my mind in a clearer space. Or,
Yeah.
hey, I can always be prospecting for new opportunities, even when I
Yes.
don't need one, which is probably a good thing, and building out a network. So think about what you
Totally.
can control when uncertainty is amongst us.
Yes, I went to a lot of Orange Theory classes during that time. And I took out my
Exercise.
frustration on the treadmill for sure.
Oh my God. I walked miles and miles and miles and listened to hours and hours of podcasts
Yes.
when I
Yes.
transitioned out of corporate. But you know what? Those
Yeah.
moments are ones that diffuse some of the negative energy and bring clarity. So,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
so,
Yeah.
so let's talk about, though, then the work that you do. I'd love maybe for you to share a little bit about maybe a client. Where were they at in their career?
Mhm.
What were their struggles? And what was your approach? And where did they wind up on the other side? Because again, as always, for my listeners, I am trying to put
Yeah.
Ashley up on a pedestal. If she resonates with you in terms of what your situation is and her approach through, I definitely want you to connect with her. But Ashley, passing it back to you, just share with us a story of
Yeah.
somebody you've worked with.
Yeah. Totally. So I will share. I'll share one or two examples. Let's see how I feel
Sure.
as they start to come up. I think the first example that I'll share is one that most people can probably relate to, either as the person or the executive that has managed this person. So has someone come to me and they were very highly respected at their company. I would call this person a rocket ship, super high performer. You put them on anything, they can solve any problem. You know that they are probably either future C suite or they're going to be a founder and they're going to be successful. And surprisingly, this person came to me and they were in such a career rut. The first meeting, um, was basically this person saying that they didn't think that they could stay at the company and that they probably needed to find another job that was better suited to them, which I think is was surprising
Okay.
to everyone around them that they were feeling this way. And we worked together, and for her, what I thought was important was doing a values assessment and really understanding what that friction may be coming from. And we figured, well, we did a values assessment and then we also did like a work reflection. So comparing where she was at in her career currently to where she was at the beginning of the year, what were the differences, how had things evolved. And what we found was that there was a work mismatch where, of course, high achievers that are like next gen executives almost there, they're in this uncomfortable shift where they're trying to shift from being execution mindset focused to being strategic focused. And she was in the center of that friction where, like, 80% of her day was spent in the weeds doing various administrative tasks. And that work was not what the CEO was asking her to do. And it was coming to a head. And once we kind of figured out what was in her control, like I said, it was very much in her control to offload some of that work to an executive assistant on the team and train that person to do some of the things that she was doing, because she had stepped into a new role and was trying to figure everything out by doing everything. But you get to a point where you should probably hand that stuff off. So we made some minor adjustments to her day and to the way that she was thinking about how she could add value to the team. It was no longer about all the things that she could do or help people with. It was about executing against the strategy and planning her day and her time around that. Once she got there, 6 months later, she had a review and she got one of few exceeds expectations, like, remarks at the company during performance reviews. This company was very much one that, like, doesn't hand out exceeds. It's like the
Yeah.
top percent of people only get that. And she was one of few who got that. And it was just such a night and day difference between how she came to me and where she landed there. And the next question was like, okay, well, now that I'm here, like, how am I thinking about the future of my career? So it was not like I need to fix this problem that is sitting right in front of me, now that that was solved, she was able to think long term. And now she's talking to the CEO about taking on more strategic work. She's got more bandwidth and like more like mental capacity to think about the long term. And it sounds like such a simple exercise, but it really made the difference for her. And a lot of that was me reflecting back what I was hearing
Yes.
her say, and her being like, oh yeah, actually that is what's happening and I do need
Uh-huh.
to break this pattern. But yeah, that was one that it just, I'm so proud of her and that evolution. And yeah, I didn't know that we would land there
And
based on the
it's
first meeting.
and it's funny. It's again the skill of a deep listener to be able to see, to your point, what the conflict was. And I like to
Yes.
add on to this because again, that friction that we're
Yeah.
celebrated for doing execution tactical work. I
Yes.
also, in addition, have found that we don't, unless you have a mentor or somebody who has done it well that you can ma-
Yeah.
mirror, we
Yeah.
don't necessarily teach people what then does it look like to create a strategic framework.
We
And I find
don't.
the framework
Yeah.
is missing. And I was missing it
Yeah.
because I was floundering in my job. So I said, well,
Yes.
where does one exist? And so I went
Yeah.
up and looked at the global strategy in line with
Yeah.
operations. And I said, okay, they
Yes.
got this element, they've got the vision, the mission,
Yes.
and then the pillars of like, we're going to do it using this, this, and this. And then
Yeah.
underneath is the tactical work, the resource, the timeline, et cetera. It's like, oh, that's
Yes.
a recipe, that's a framework. And I tried to
Yes.
copy paste it at my
Yeah.
level. And I
Yeah.
actually found that once I figured it out for myself, I now
Yeah.
teach others this is what a strategy looks like. And it is
Yes.
a different headspace. It is
It
more of
is.
thinking,
Yeah.
facilitation,
Yes.
alignment, stakeholder
Yes.
management. It takes a little bit longer, but it's far more
Yes.
rewarding than, oh, I got 50
Yeah.
things taken off my to do list today.
Yes. 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 And I think, and this is for the executives out there who may have just given this feedback. The thing that I hear people say the most often is, my leader is telling me to be more strategic, but I do not know what that means. And they
Exactly.
interpret it as that means they can no longer execute. And I'm like, no, no, no. That's not what this means.
And then talk about the lousy feedback. You need to be more strategic and more creative. I got all of
Yeah.
that. Then,
Yeah.
okay, what do
Yeah.
I do? How do I
What
evolve
do I
that
do?
muscle? Oh, take this
Yeah.
course. And then there's just no
Yeah.
reinforcement amidst
Yeah.
all the resources. Some of the larger companies go, okay, I'm
Yeah.
getting a little bit on a rant here, but just know if you're a leader out there and you see this in your people, you got to help coach
Yeah.
those
Yes.
skills in so then they become self sufficient. Don't just say
Yeah.
you're not.
Yes. Exactly. And the talent is there. The raw talent is absolutely there. Sometimes people just need a framework for how to go about the task. And it's not that they don't have it, or, you can't nurture it in someone, but yeah, be more strategic. It doesn't quite land.
So, where does more of your work come from? Is it the C suite leader who's already there that is seeing gaps in the capability of the next level? Or is it the neck, or is it on more the C suite leader? Is it how does that work? And or where do you prefer to work? Where does your business go?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I think about my work in two buckets.
Mhm,
So there's advisory, which is typically the C suite executive who's
mhm,
coming to me and they're like, I really, I want to build a high performance organization and I think I could get there, but I don't know how to make the most of the team that I have. Right. So there's that
mhm,
advisory
mhm,
work.
mhm,
And then there is the coaching side of the business, which it's either a next gen executive coming to me and being like, yep, I have the self awareness to know that I need this support, or a CEO who has already identified the gaps in their teams and they're like, yep, here are the people that I want for you to coach. So, yeah, that's where my work most commonly falls into.
mhm.
I love I just love working with people one on one. There is nothing like it for me. I'll do workshops, but I think I am in my zone of genius, like you said in the beginning, when I'm just working with someone one on one. And it's exactly what you said, like that opportunity to deeply listen and
Yeah.
pull out insights for people and,
Mm.
just mirror back what their experiences are.
So, for the leader out there that has people in their care, I want you to talk to them directly because sometimes, depending on the size of the business, and they themselves are a high achiever, they may not necessarily bring in an advisor. And so, what
Yeah.
are some of the symptoms of a situation where maybe they should consider an external advisor versus doing it themselves or trying to do it themselves?
Yeah.
What are the, yeah.
Okay. Yep. So one of the most common things I hear is if you're a CEO or even a C-suite executive, you're at the top and it's lonely. And because you're in this lonely position, it is inappropriate to share some of the thoughts that you are having about some of your team members internally, right?
Mhm.
And it's also hard to get that objectivity about a person's performance or the ways that you think that they can grow within the company, or you can't share what your fears are. And I think that's like sometimes the number one driver is being like, I need an external objective person who maybe doesn't know my team like I do, but can take what I'm thinking and feeling and help me translate that into action. So that's number one symptom. Or the other one that they come to me with is I have a problem. And I am weighing what I think is, a business priority versus a morale and team priority. And that often looks like you have someone who is brilliant, but maybe not so great in terms of EQ, and they're damaging the morale of the team, but they're driving business results. And what do you do in that
Oh,
situation? Yeah.
wow.
How do you
And
work through that? Yeah.
And that's a really interesting thing. That could go for there's a lot of geniuses that have so much
Yeah.
intellectual property or customer relationships that they're the only, and you depend so much of your business on them, but they wreck,
Yeah.
they're a train wreck on the inside and
Yeah.
what to do. So sometimes they put
Yes.
in like a mid-tier leader in the way to manage the day
Yeah.
to day. So this exceptional person doesn't damage things, but
Yeah.
um, that that's not sustainable.
No, it's not. And I remember working somewhere and we had this amazing HR person that pulled someone aside that was somewhat like this and like very brilliant, but if you were in the room with them and you didn't agree with what they were saying, you would probably feel like the dumbest person on earth, right? They would make you feel that way in the way that they reacted to what you were saying
Yeah.
or the way that they spoke back to you. And the CHRO pulled this person aside and was like, "Hey, you are great. You can do anything. You can be a CEO one day, but you will not progress at this company if everyone in a room with you feels like they're inferior to you. You can't make people feel like that." And I think hearing about that conversation shifted the way that I worked and the way that I thought about how how honest you can be with someone about their behaviors, especially when it's not related to the work. But the impact that you have on people is real. And people need to be able to feel like they can work with you and on a team with you. And if you are damaging that trust in those relationships, then yeah, that can be a barrier to you continuing to grow. And it's okay to tell someone that.
So I find great strength in an organization or a chief HR professional that brings in that external focus,
Yeah.
because it may have been that in the past the organization or environments never had the courage
Yeah.
to work
That's
through
exactly
it.
it.
So it's they're
Yeah.
enabled, or they've never received appropriate feedback. Just either
Yep.
don't do this, or we just ignore that person that
Yeah.
rubs people the wrong way. And so I think you bring up a really valid point. Again, if somebody is a little rough around the edges, valuable to the organization, have the courage
Yeah.
to show that you care
Yeah.
about the person. They want to just do good work. That's their
Yeah.
how they're rewarded, and that's how they get their energy from.
Yep.
And just know, find a way to find common ground to say, well, in that process, if you need people to do what you do, you could be
Yeah.
damaging them along the way, and then you don't have those people around you. So have the courage to ask for help, which is one of my taglines.
Yeah.
Don't wait until there's too much damage done.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
This, I think you and I get along really well because
We
we
do.
see so much of this in the organization and maybe people turn a blind eye. But these are the things that can wreck great people, great organizations. And I can't
Yeah.
help say enough to get an external perspective. Now, I normally drop in, I'm often asked to solve technical issues, but along the
Oh,
way,
interesting. Yeah.
I look at the dynamics of, well, how is the CEO behaving? How are the people
Yeah.
in his care behaving? And what is that dynamic causing? Because that could be stirring up the nest a little bit and
Yeah.
creating some of that chaos that I've been dropped in to kind of fix. So,
Hmm.
yeah, just to have the courage to kind of get an external perspective. It may be the best
Yeah.
thing you ever did for the organization. But
Yeah.
Ashley, this has been an amazing conversation, and I want people to check you out, learn more about what you do. I want to give you the floor one last time for some thoughts for our audience and ways people can engage with you.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you for doing this. So, if anything that I said throughout this episode resonates with you, you can find me online. My website is workwithashleyr.com. Very easy to remember. I also write a weekly newsletter for high achieving next gen executives,
Mhm.
basically, or really ambitious individual contributors, even. I love when I hear people that are in their mid 20s or something soaking up my advice because they see long term that they
Mhm.
want to be on this pathway. But my newsletter is newsletter.workwithashleyr.com. Also, very easy. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. It's Ashley Rudolph with a PH, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
This has been a delightful conversation. I'm so grateful you reached out to be on the show. This has been a great
Yes.
getting to know you, letting my audience get to know you. And it's not a one and done. We will stay in touch. But I want to say thank you for dropping it on the show, and I wish you well and continue success, Ashley.
Thank you so much, Deb. This was an amazing conversation. I'm so glad that one, I reached out, and two, you responded to me. So, yeah, thank you so much.